How can you unlock the true power of engagement at every stage of your journey? What if every interaction from the beginning to the end could leave a lasting impact and drive you towards success? Join me as I delve into the art of meaningful engagement, exploring strategies, techniques, and insights that can transform your relationships, businesses, and personal growth. Prepare to unlock the full potential of every stage and embrace a world where engagement becomes the key to unlocking remarkable achievements.
Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining me today. If you missed my last episode and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on my social media pages as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. And if you'd like to receive notifications on when my podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Before I get into questions on this topic, let me tell you a little bit about my guest. David D. Doerrier is a dynamic professional speaker, trainer, and coach with over 25 years of experience in the field of training and development, leadership, and communication. With a passion for helping individuals and organizations achieve their full potential, David brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to his presentations. David's engaging style and unique ability to connect with his audience has made him a sought-after speaker at industry conferences, corporate events, and educational institutions across the country. He is known for his ability to simplify complex concepts and deliver actionable insights that empower individuals to take their communication skills to the next level. So, David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Candy. This is an honor to be here today. I've been following you for quite some time. And again, thank you for inviting me to be a part of your podcast.
Well, I'm looking forward to our discussion. But before I ask you any questions on this topic, I'd love for you to share just a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got started becoming a speaker and a coach.
Well, it's been quite a journey to get to where I am today. And when I was growing up as a kid, I never realized that I would be where I am now. I grew up as a shy, pimply kid on Long Island, New York, and if I could have found a cave to spend the rest of my life in, I would have been very happy. People that I meet from my high school days today say to me, I didn't even know you could talk. Even my siblings say to me at times that I didn't know that you could talk. But, higher powers had some sort of different or had a different path for me in mind. After high school, I joined the Air Force and spent a total of 28 years in the Air Force, 10 years active, 18 in the reserves. But about 8 years into my military career, I ended up in radio broadcasting, working part-time for a radio station on Guam. That had always been a passion of mine. And then I left full-time Air Force to pursue fame and fortune in radio, found some of the fame, but none of the fortune. And thank goodness, 12 years later, the Air Force Reserves offered me a job to be an instructor. This was back in 1995. And that's when I started learning the craft of designing training, delivering training on a daily basis, and found that I loved it. And it's been a part of my life for almost 30 years. And along the way, training trainers to train, training upper echelon in the organization to be better facilitators, speakers, and so on. And now that's my full-time business, working with folks to help them craft a more engaging message and have more confident stage presence.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your service. I am so glad to have heard that you did that too. But it's interesting how so many of us who are shy, I'm also shy. I never would have thought I would have been having a podcast and, was not one to really want to have to break out of the shell. And I learned through business, I kind of had to as well too. I mean, early on, I had to do that through school and stuff too. But I definitely stepped out of my comfort zone but was also on the radio. So it's kind of interesting. We have similar backgrounds. Our high school had a radio station. So I got my FCC license and did a DJ thing for a bit too. So, but we're talking today about different types of stages too. It could be where we're actually standing in front of someone in a live audience, or, maybe it's even virtual. So there's different things that people think of now as stages. But before we get into like how to actually be comfortable and present and engage, all of that, one of the things that you want to talk about is adult learning theory. So what really is that?
That's a great question. The adult learning theory is something that I was originally introduced to when I started becoming a trainer in corporate. And these are principles that are all geared toward creating engagement and making sure that your message is going to stick. Because as a trainer, our objective is to train processes, information of all kinds, and it's not just throwing it against the wall and hoping that it sticks. There needs to be a process to engaging your adult learner in this case, and making sure that not only the message gets through all of those distractions that the adult has, but also once it gets through that the message sticks. Because in training, we have to, that individual, those trainees need to now take that information and immediately apply it once they get back to their desk.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, nowadays, it just seems like the attention span for someone is even less than it used to be, because people are so used to like quick little things on their phones. So, I mean, how do you even incorporate being able to teach someone and taking into consideration this theory when there's probably a lot going on in their brain, even to be able to like bring in what you're teaching?
A great question. Now, if the adult learning theory is being utilized properly, then because you're creating that engagement with your audience, that engagement is helping to lessen those distractions, and it's helping to keep those adult learners focused. So there are 8 principles, and you mentioned earlier what can I help to offer the audience. One thing is, you get in touch with me, I'll send you a free copy of the 8 principles of engagement, or the adult learning theory. However, it's all about engaging your audience right from the very beginning. The adult learner has to understand the WIFM, what's in it for me. If they don't understand the value of this training, the value of this presentation, the value of the meeting, the value of this mentorship, whatever it happens to be, then that audience member is going to tune out if they don't see the value. So it starts from the very first words that come out of that facilitator's mouth to immediately grab that audience's attention, and to show the audience that today we're going to learn 3 things. Well, maybe even before that, I would say, what if I was able to show you 3 ways that you can capture your audience's attention and keep your audience's attention all the way to the very end of your presentation? Would that be of interest to you? People raising their hands. Yes. What if I was able to show you that these 3 things that I'm going to help you with today, you can immediately apply once you leave here? Would that be of interest to you? Yes. Well, great. These are the 3 things we're going to look at. So immediately getting their buy-in, and so they understand the WIFM, that's in the beginning, and then there's ways to maintain it throughout the presentation.
And I'm thinking, while you're speaking too, that somebody who is paid to go to a conference and hear, a presentation or a keynote or something too, is probably a little bit more already buying into that, because they've already seen that's something that's going to help them, versus, okay, I work for a corporation. They want me to go through this training, so I have to do it. I haven't invested anything myself yet other than my time. So do you see that there's like different types of engagements and maybe different ways to approach that?
Yeah, you've brought up a really good point here, that there certainly is different levels of engagement, and I've seen it all. That I spent a lot of my years training software, training soft skills within the organization that I worked with within other organizations. And sometimes there is that, it happens more often than not, where somebody shows up for work in the morning and the first thing their boss says, oh, by the way, you've got to sit in a training session all day today. Well, right there, you've got someone who's walking in the room who's not very motivated.
Mhm.
Now, that's my job as an instructor to motivate them and let them know why the value for being here. So, yes, you have a wide variety. You mentioned the person that goes to a conference. They're spending some good money to go to that conference to learn more about things in their field. And however, there are many things that can distract an audience. And well, the reason I'm going here is that even though these people have paid and they're eager to learn, if the presenter is not doing a good job engaging their audience, if the speaker is all over the place, bouncing all over the place, and there's no real structure to their presentation, now this person who is eager to learn is just totally lost and has zoomed out, and now they're sitting, guess what, on their phones.
Right.
So in all of those situations, it's up to the presenter to has the responsibility of engaging the audience. Yes, your audience is eager to learn, but if the presenter is not doing their job, audience has left the building.
Right. Well, and I'm hearing as you're speaking a couple mistakes, right? The first one's not really getting their buy-in through the what's in it for me. Secondly, you don't have your presentation really organized and you're kind of all over the place. But what are some other mistakes maybe that you've seen or places where presenters struggle and they're not able to keep their audience as engaged as they would like?
Yeah, great question. I've been evaluating speakers for a long time, and one place that I have been evaluating speakers is at networking events. I've been a part of a number of networking events here in the Atlanta area, and I'll sit in the back of the room and I'll take some notes down because I guess I just can't avoid doing that. And I'll take notes of the speaker, and at the end of the networking event, I will ask them, is it okay that I give you my feedback? And many times there are three things that each of those speakers have struggled with. And the first is knowing your audience. Many times a speaker will come into the room and talk to us as if we are all experts. And from my experience, what that does is it just goes right over our heads. So the first thing is having to know your audience. The second thing that I've observed with speakers, and these are folks that are, I would say, are business owners, folks that haven't yet spent the time to focus on their presentation skills. So the second thing would be incorporating stories. We as adults love to hear stories, and stories are extremely impactful to your audience because now your audience can visualize it. They can see it, smell it, taste it, emotionally connect to that story. And now that's what you want to do. You want to bring your audience in to that presentation versus just talking at them and vomiting information. So know your audience, incorporate stories. And the third is some sort of compelling conclusion. I can't tell you how many times I've observed speakers, they just get to the end and say, all right, I'm out of here. Have a nice day. And there's nothing there. There's no review. There's no call to action. There's nothing at the end to kind of wrap things up and remind us what it is we just went through. As audience members, many times we're hearing this information for the very first time, even going to a conference. We're hearing this for the very first time. It's a lot of new information. So we need to be, the audience needs to be able to absorb it, to be able to take it all in. You can't just throw it all at us all at once and then just leave and expect us to remember it. You've got to give us in small chunks and then wrap it up at the end.
That's a great tip too, because I think a lot of people probably think, well, I need to give as much information as possible so they see that I'm the expert, and that could be really overwhelming. And like you
Mhm,
say, how do you even process that if you have so much information? And it
mhm,
is hard to remember all of
mhm,
that. And especially, I was thinking while you were talking too about the ways that different people learn, right? Some are visual
mhm,
learners, some are
mhm,
auditory, and some are kinesthetic. So do you
mhm,
have any recommendations too, as a presenter, how you can actually reach people in each of those areas that will help
mhm,
them even retain what you're talking about or
mhm,
comprehend what you're talking about,
mhm.
because people are so different as well in their learning
Okay.
styles?
Well, I'm really glad that you brought that up because that's something that a lot of people forget about. And many of them will think, well, I learned this way, so everybody else must learn exactly the same way. And the speaker, that subject matter expert, they know their information so well, they can easily visualize it in their heads.
Mhm.
PowerPoint many times gets a bad rap, but I like to use PowerPoint to reinforce, not to be my script, not to
Mhm.
be the entire presentation is the PowerPoint. No, it is just to reinforce what it is that I'm saying for that visual learner. And I would say that I am a visual learner. So, and in many cases, you don't even have to have text on the screen. You can just have an
Mhm.
image. For example, if I'm going to be talking about the fear of speaking in public, just having a man or a woman, on the screen to demonstrate the fear of speaking in public, that says a lot more to your audience many times than text on the screen. And I like that
Mhm.
you brought up the kinesthetic, getting your, yeah, here is it's really that emotional connection, getting your hands on it. Now, if we are in a training session, certainly I can we can have small group activities, large group activities. You can do things on your own in a training session. You can even do that in a keynote as well, depending on the subject. But I think one of the best ways to incorporate kinesthetic would be stories, because now you
Mm.
can get that emotional connection. Now people are just visualizing it in their heads and they're emotionally connected, and depending on the story, there could be laughter, there could be crying, there could be all kinds of things that could be part of that. So definitely the auditory, that's the speaker, be able to speak correctly to your audience so you don't overwhelm them with your words, having some sort of a visual reinforcement for that visual learner, and then kinesthetic, getting their hands on it if possible, but definitely incorporate stories.
Mhm. And as we're, going through things, are there some like tips that maybe I didn't know to ask, like information you want to share with the audience to help them be better at their presentations and what you can share with them?
That's a good question. I think one of the biggest things when people hear presentation skills coach, they automatically think, well, I'm not presenting in front of large audiences.
Mhm.
I'm just talking to business people. I'm just talking to customers that are coming in. When we're presenting all the time, whether you're just talking to one person at a networking event, whether you're giving a presentation at a networking event, whether you're training a new employee, mentoring someone, working with a customer, working with a prospect, standing in front of thousands of people, all of those are examples of presenting to your audience. So I think
Mhm.
that the term presentation skills coach is a little misconceiving, because it's not just speaking in front of that large audience.
Mhm. Well, and one thing I was thinking of too is, originally a lot of people were face to face and you had that live
Mhm.
presentation. And then, of course, with COVID, we had to go to Zoom or, other video formats. And it is harder, I think, sometimes to keep people engaged on Zoom as well, because you've got people that can then more easily check their email on their computer or their
Mhm.
phone, or
Mhm.
where they're not, if they're sitting in front of you, obviously doing all of those things. So, do you have any tips on if you're doing, let's say, a webinar or maybe some
Mhm.
kind of training, but you're still doing it through video, how to help
Mhm.
keep those engaged as well and not distracted by those things that are so easy to go to while you're
Yeah.
on a computer?
Oh yeah. Oh, and I definitely do not disagree with you that it's certainly more difficult with Zoom or any one of those other visual virtual platforms. However, it's not impossible. A couple of things. The number one tip to engage your audience is to look at your audience. Now, when I say look at your audience, it's look directly into the camera. What I want to challenge everyone who's listening to this now is to put your finger on your camera. Well, not too close. You don't want to get your fingerprint on it. And now that you know where your camera is, you should be talking directly into that camera, because now I am looking directly at you, at everyone that's in this audience, versus I have 3 screens here, 4 if you count that one back there. But if I have all of the faces of the people that are in this meeting on this screen over here, and I'm talking to them by looking at that screen, well, let me ask you a question, Candy. How does this come across to you if I'm talking to you looking over here? How is that coming across to you?
There's no eye contact, right? It looks like you're, just doing something else. So yes, I agree.
Exactly. Or if I'm looking down at my notes the entire time. But let me say that there's an asterisk, that there's a caveat to this whole thing, that yes, when you are virtual, even if you're live, there are times where you need to look away from your audience, to look at your notes, or to look at another screen if I'm working through a software product or whatever it happens to be. Yes, I need to look at things at times. However, I think it's most important that when you're doing your introduction, when you're doing your conclusion, when you're asking questions, when you're answering questions, when you're telling a story, when you're into parts of your presentation that you know well enough that you don't have to look at something, you should be looking into that camera all of the time, because that is going to create that engagement. So that's number one. That's probably the easiest. Well, it's not easy. It takes practice. Now, there are cameras that you can get, like I have, that you can adjust so it comes down on your monitor. So it's not at the top of the monitor, which forces you now to look up and all of the participants are below you. So that's one thing. The other is, just like in a live presentation, you need to set the stage up front. You need to have that engagement immediately. And one of the things that you can do as people are coming into the room, for example, is ask a simple question. What did you have for lunch? What did you have for breakfast? What part of the world are you tuning in from? Put it into the chat. Put it in a whiteboard or some sort of interactive page of some sort, getting them to be interactive right from the beginning. Now, something to keep in mind is that you've got to be consistent with that interactivity all the way through. It's not having one thing here, one thing somewhere in the middle, something maybe 3/4 of the way in. You've got to be very consistent with that engagement to keep them. And also set the rules. And part of the rules would be letting them understand the WIFM. What's in it for me? That, listen, if you're going to listen, if you're going to be here today, then great, because at the end of the session today, you're going to walk away with this huge understanding of X.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things too, I would love your feedback on too, is in video presentations. I've had this a lot too, where whether it's a training or, whatever the method of, like, why they're on Zoom or, like I said, video things. A lot of times people are going to say, well, I love engagement. So, blow up the chat and everything and put all your comments in there. And so for me, number one, I am an introvert too. So like having to do all of that stuff all the time is not really something that I necessarily enjoy. But a lot of times what I find too is they're always saying, like, comment on this and, read other people's things while they're presenting. Then I'm not learning what they're presenting, because I have to now look at the chat and see what people are saying. And so what do you feel? Is it still helpful to have people really like chatting all the time while something's going on? Or do you feel that's kind of overused? Like, what would you say for someone who's presenting and they want to make sure they're using it effectively, but not having those distractions?
Yes, great question. So now a couple of things. Number one, you want to mix up the way that you're engaging your audience. You don't want it to be just one thing all of the time. So some examples would be, yes, use the chat, use the poll, use the whiteboard, open up the lines to have people interact live with the presenter, have a video, have a second presenter, coming up with a variety of different ways to engage your audience. You don't want to, and now with that said, what you want to avoid is now creating distraction. And what you described to me, if I understood correctly, was the facilitator is saying, hey, everybody, read what's going on in the chat and learn from what's going on there in the chat and take away from some stuff that's going on in the chat. However, I'm going to be over here giving a bunch of new information over here. Well, I think everybody that just heard me explain that, if I understood you correctly, that's not going to work. And because the only way that that's going to work is if I want you to read through the way that I would have handled it is, yes, I will have you have everybody put their responses in the chat. And then I'm going to go through there and say, oh, thank you, Candy. That's a great response. Thank you, David. Wow, I like what you wrote there, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to focus on that. I've got everybody focused over here. Right. Now that we've focused on that, now let's go back and let's go ahead and do some new content. So, and I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally for me, like when you first come in and like sometimes, they're waiting because they want to make sure, they start with most of the people there. So they might, wait another couple of minutes after like the start time. But so they might say like, tell us where you're coming from right now. Like, that's okay. Like I could be like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. But when I have people say like, I just really love engagement. So make sure you're always putting things in the chat and, and then you're trying to learn what they're saying, but then your chat things keep popping up all the time. For me, it makes it difficult. So I just didn't know your opinion on that. But for me, I know what I like or I don't like. And it's fine. Like if there's a poll or there's like every once in a while, like put a comment in there and everyone quickly puts a comment, but then you're focused on the presentation again. That's much easier for me than when all of the participants just keep posting nonstop in the chat the whole time. And it's just really difficult.
Well, I think that what you've described there is an individual that doesn't understand the definition of engagement. So just having people talking to each other and doing their own thing over here in the chat. Okay, those people are engaged, but they're not engaged with the speaker. So next time you see that, hand that person my card.
Okay, sounds good. So, well, I know we are coming close to the end of time we have together today. This has been a fabulous discussion, and I'm sure there's so much more that people would be interested in learning. So I want to ask if you have an offer that you would like to share, and how can they connect with you if they want more information?
That's a great question. I'll start with the connection piece. There's two ways that you can get in touch with me. One is through my website, presentyourwaytosuccess.com, and on LinkedIn. Just about on a daily basis, I'm posting tips and tricks on how to be a better presenter, a better facilitator, and sharing a lot of information. So definitely look me up on LinkedIn and reach out and connect with me and let us know that you heard this podcast today. And if you do reach out and let me know that you heard this podcast, I've got two things for you. Number one, I'll send you a free copy, an e-copy of my book on the 8 principles of engagement. And I'll also send you a link where you can set up a complimentary 45-minute coaching session, no selling. It's all about you and what type of any questions you have about a presentation. Maybe you want a third eye to look at a presentation that you've been giving for a while. You need to create something from scratch. Whatever it happens to be, get in touch with me, and you got those two things, the free book and a 45-minute coaching session.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, David, for being a guest on my show and talking about this topic. I really enjoyed the discussion. I learned some things as well, and I'm sure our guests did too. So I appreciate your taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you, Candy.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. I hope you found this topic interesting and enjoyed the informative discussion. Would you please share my show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. I'd really appreciate your support. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to my guest at any of the links that they shared, or you could send me a message at media@abandp.com. I hope you can join me for my next interview, and remember, you can connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and my website is abandp.com. This episode is sponsored by Affordable Bookkeeping and Payroll Services. If you are overwhelmed trying to handle the financial aspects of your business, AB&P is here to help. Contact us today to discuss your needs at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.